Can I sit with you? The voice was soft. Too soft for how loud the cafe felt just seconds before. I looked up from my cold coffee, my fingers still wrapped around the paper cup like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. It was almost 10:30 p.m., the late crowd thinning out, chairs scraping across the floor, baristas wiping down counters with that end-of-shift exhaustion I knew too well. I had been sitting there for maybe 20 minutes, staring at nothing, pretending I wasn't avoiding going back to my empty apartment. Then I saw her. She couldn't have been older than 6. Small, pale, big green eyes that didn't match the rest of her. Kids her age were supposed to be loud, messy, sticky with sugar and laughter. She wasn't. She stood there like she had somewhere else to be, somewhere important. But for some reason, she chose my table. Can I sit with you? She asked again, tilting her head slightly, like she was studying me. Not asking. Deciding. I hesitated. Every instinct told me this was strange. Kids didn't just walk up to strangers at night. Not alone. Not in a place like this. I glanced around, expecting a parent to rush over, to apologize, to pull her back. No one came. The people around us didn't even seem to notice her. Or maybe they were pretending not to. I swallowed, forcing a small smile. Yeah, sure, I said, sliding my bag off the chair across from me. She climbed up without another word, her small hands smoothing her dress like she'd been taught manners most adults didn't even have anymore. Up close, she looked even more out of place. Not dirty, not neglected, just precise, like everything about her had been chosen carefully. Thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Then she looked at me again, really looked this time, and something in my chest tightened. You look sad, she added, just like that. No hesitation, no filter. I let out a quiet breath, a soft laugh that didn't feel real. Long day, I said. She nodded like she understood more than she should, like she'd had long days too. My name is Lily, she said, folding her hands neatly on the table. Emily, I replied. For a moment, we just sat there. The hum of the espresso machine behind the counter. The low murmur of voices. The flicker of streetlights through the window. Normal. It should have felt normal. But it didn't. Because Lily kept glancing toward the door. Not nervously. Not exactly. More like she was waiting. Or counting. I followed her gaze. The glass door reflected the street outside. Dark, quiet, the occasional car passing by. And then I noticed it. A black SUV parked across the street. Engine running. Lights off. I blinked, telling myself I was overthinking. It was just a car. Just a coincidence. But when I looked back at Lily, she was already watching me. And this time, there was something different in her expression. Something calm. Certain. Like she knew exactly what I had just seen. You shouldn't be alone tonight, she said softly. My stomach tightened. Neither should you. I replied before I could stop myself. For a split second, something flickered across her face. Not fear. Not surprise. Something older. Then it was gone. Replaced by that same quiet stillness. I'm not alone, she said. And that's when the cafe door opened. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to let the cold night air slip inside. But everything changed. Conversations lowered. The barista paused mid-wipe. Even the guy near the window stopped typing. I didn't turn right away. I didn't want to. Because suddenly, I understood something I couldn't explain. Lily didn't come here by accident. And whoever just walked in wasn't either. The air shifted before I even saw him. It was subtle, like the moment before a storm when everything goes still and your body reacts before your mind understands why. I turned slowly, my fingers tightening around the edge of the table, and that was when I saw him. He stood just inside the doorway, tall enough that he seemed to block the light behind him, his silhouette sharp against the dim glow of the cafe. Dark coat, perfectly fitted. Dark hair, pushed back like he had not touched it once all day. And eyes that did not search the room. They already knew where to look. They landed on Lily first. Then they moved to me. Not curious. Not surprised. Measured. Like I was something he had not planned for, but was already calculating. No one announced him. No one needed to. The room adjusted around him without a single word being spoken. Conversations softened. Movement slowed. Even the barista avoided looking up again. I felt it in my chest, that quiet pressure, like the world had narrowed down to a single point between his gaze and mine. Lily did not turn. She did not need to. You are late, she said softly, still looking at me, like she was talking to someone who had just stepped into place exactly when expected. His voice came next. Low. Controlled. close enough that I felt it more than heard it. I am right on time. I did not realize he had walked across the room until he was standing beside our table. No rushed steps. No hesitation. Just presence. He did not sit. He did not introduce himself. He simply stood there, looking down at Lily for a brief second before his attention returned to me. Up close, he looked even more unreal. Not just because of how he dressed or carried himself, but because everything about him felt intentional. Like nothing in his life happened by accident, including this moment. You should not talk to strangers, he said, but he was not looking at Lily when he said it. His eyes stayed on mine. Steady. Unblinking. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. My thoughts were slower than they should have been, like I was trying to catch up to something already moving too fast. She came to me. I managed, my voice quieter than I expected. It sounded small in comparison to the weight of his silence. Lily finally turned, her small hand resting on the table between us. I asked first, she said calmly, as if she was correcting something important. He looked at her then, and for the first time, something softened. Not much, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. And she said yes, Lily added, glancing back at me with that same knowing expression. I felt my pulse quicken, because suddenly, it did not feel like I had made a simple choice. It felt like I had stepped into something without realizing it. He exhaled slowly, almost like he was deciding how to handle something unexpected. Then he reached into his coat and placed a small folded bill on the table. Not rushed, not dramatic, just done. Thank you for your time, he said, his tone polite but distant, like a conversation that had already ended in his mind. But he did not move. Not yet. His gaze stayed on me for 1 second longer than necessary, just long enough to make my stomach tighten again. What is your name? He asked. Not because he needed to know, because he had already decided it mattered. I hesitated. Everything in me said to keep it to myself, to walk away, to pretend this never happened. But Lily was watching me, and somehow, that made it harder to say no. Emily, I said. He nodded once, like that confirmed something, like a piece had just fallen into place. Emily, he repeated quietly. Then he reached for Lily's hand. She slid off the chair without resistance, her fingers slipping into his like it was the most natural thing in the world. But before they turned to leave, she looked back at me one last time. I liked sitting with you, she said. Simple, honest. And for a second, everything else faded, until the man beside her spoke again. Next time, he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear it. Do not sit with someone you do not understand. It sounded like a warning. It felt like something else. And as they walked away, the cafe slowly came back to life around me, like nothing had happened at all. But my hands were still shaking, because I knew one thing for certain. That was not the end of it. I should have left right then, paid my bill, walked out into the cold air, and told myself it was just a strange moment with strangers I would never see again. But I did not move. I sat there long after the door closed behind them, staring at the spot where Lily had been, my coffee untouched, my thoughts louder than the quiet hum of the cafe, returning to normal. People started talking again. Chairs scraped. Someone laughed near the counter like nothing had shifted at all, like the air had not just changed 10 minutes ago. I forced myself to breathe, slow and steady, pressing my palms against the table until the slight tremor in my fingers settled. It was nothing, I told myself. Just a man picking up his daughter. Just a coincidence. But that did not explain the way everyone had gone silent. It did not explain the way he looked at me like I was already part of something I did not understand. I grabbed my bag and stood up quickly, the legs of the chair dragging against the floor louder than I intended. A few people glanced over, then looked away just as fast. I walked toward the counter, pulling out my wallet, my movements a little too rushed, a little too aware. You are good, the barista said before I could speak. I blinked. What? He nodded toward my table without meeting my eyes. It has been taken care of. Of course it had. My stomach tightened again. I nodded slowly, slipping my wallet back into my bag, forcing a polite, thank you, that felt automatic. Then I pushed the door open and stepped outside. The cold hit me immediately, sharp and grounding. I inhaled deeply, letting it fill my lungs, trying to shake off the lingering tension. The street was quieter now. A few cars passed. Streetlights flickered overhead. And across the street, the black SUV was gone. I told myself that should make me feel better. It did not. I started walking, pulling my coat tighter around me, my footsteps echoing softly against the sidewalk. My apartment was only 3 blocks away. I had walked this route 100 times. It had never felt like this. Every sound seemed louder. Every shadow stretched a little longer than it should. I shook my head, almost laughing at myself. "You are overthinking," I muttered under my breath. It was just a kid. Just a dad. But even as I said it, I remembered Lily's eyes. The way she had looked at me. Not like a child meeting a stranger. Like she had chosen me. I turned the corner onto my street, the familiar row of buildings coming into view, and that was when I noticed it. A car parked halfway down the block. Engine off. Lights off. I slowed my steps without meaning to, my gaze flickering toward it for just a second. It could have been anyone. A neighbor. Someone visiting. Nothing unusual. Except it was the same kind of car. Black. Clean. Too still. My pulse picked up again, a quiet rhythm in my chest that did not match the calm I was trying to hold on to. Do not be ridiculous, I told myself. I kept walking, eyes forward now, focusing on the entrance to my building. 10 more steps. 8. 5. I reached into my bag. For my keys, my fingers brushing against the metal just as I heard it. A car door. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just there. Behind me. I froze. Just for a second. Then I turned slowly. It was not the same man from the cafe. But the suit was the same. Dark. Perfectly fitted. He stood a few feet away, hands relaxed at his sides, posture calm. Professional. Like he had all the time in the world. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice even, respectful. My heart stopped for a beat. I never told them my last name. My grip tightened around my keys. "Yes." I replied carefully, every instinct on alert now. He gave a small nod, like I had just confirmed something important. "You do not need to worry," he said. "You are safe." Safe. The word landed heavier than it should have, because I had not said I was afraid. And before I could ask anything, before I could step back or turn away, he added one more thing. "She asked if you made it home." Lily. My breath caught. And suddenly, this was not just a strange night anymore. It was something else entirely. I did not move. Not right away. The cold air pressed against my skin, but it was nothing compared to the weight of what he had just said. "She asked if you made it home." Not he. Not they. She. Lily. My fingers tightened around my keys, the metal biting into my palm just enough to keep me present. "How does she know where I live?" I asked, my voice steady even though my chest felt anything but. The man did not react the way most people would. No hesitation. No apology. Just a calm, measured look, like the question itself had already been expected. "She does not," he replied. "We do." That should not have sounded reassuring. It did not. My heartbeat picked up, each pulse louder in my ears, but I forced myself to stay still, to not take that step back my body was already preparing for. Why? The word came out sharper this time. More direct. Because I needed something that made sense. Something normal. He studied me for a brief second, then gave a small, almost respectful nod, like I had asked the right question. "Because you matter to her," he said simply. The answer was too simple. Too clean. Like it skipped over everything that actually mattered. "I sat with her for 10 minutes, I said, my brows pulling together, frustration slipping into my voice despite my effort to stay composed. That does not mean anything. But even as I said it, I knew it was not true. I had seen the way she looked at me, the way she spoke, the way she chose my table out of an entire room. The man's expression did not change, but there was something in his eyes now. Not emotion, understanding. "To her it does," he said. Silence stretched between us, thin and fragile. I glanced past him toward the parked car, then back at the entrance to my building just a few steps away. Close enough to feel safe. Far enough that I was not there yet. "So what happens now?" I asked quietly, because that was the part no one had explained. That was the part my instincts were trying to prepare me for. He followed my gaze briefly, then returned his attention to me. "Nothing," he said. Another simple answer. Another one that did not quite land. "You go inside. You lock your door. You continue your life as usual." As usual. The words felt almost ironic. Like anything about tonight could be considered usual anymore. I let out a slow breath, searching his face for something that would tell me this was over. That I could walk away from this without looking back. But there was nothing careless about the way he stood there. Nothing temporary. Everything about him said this was not a coincidence. This was a decision. I nodded once, more to myself than to him, and turned toward the entrance of my building. My steps were measured now. Controlled. I refused to rush. refused to show the unease still sitting just beneath the surface. I reached the door, slid my key into the lock, and pushed it open. Warm air greeted me from inside, the familiar scent of old carpet and quiet hallways wrapping around me like something safe. Normal. I stepped in, but before I let the door close, I glanced back over my shoulder. He was still there. Same position. Same calm presence. Watching. Not threatening. Not leaving. Just there. Like a line had been drawn that I could not see, but could definitely feel. Our eyes met one last time. And for a second, I thought about asking more. About demanding answers I knew I would not fully understand. But instead, I said nothing. I stepped inside and let the door close behind me with a soft click. The sound echoed louder than it should have in the empty hallway. I stood there for a moment, my back against the door, listening to the silence. No footsteps. No movement. Just the faint hum of the building settling for the night. I should have felt relieved. Safe. Done. But I did not. Because somewhere between the cafe and this door, something had shifted. Something I could not undo. And as I finally pushed myself away from the door and started toward the stairs, one thought stayed with me. Quiet, but persistent. She had chosen me. And now, they knew exactly where to find me. I did not sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching the faint glow of streetlights shift across the walls as cars passed outside, each sound pulling my attention like a thread I could not let go of. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face again. Lily. The way she looked at me like she already knew something I did not. The way she said she liked sitting with me, like it meant more than it should have. I turned onto my side, pulling the blanket tighter around me, trying to convince myself this was just my mind overreacting. People met strangers all the time. Kids talked to adults. Nothing about that was unusual. Except this was. Everything about this was. I exhaled slowly, pressing my hand against my chest, feeling the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. It was real. I was safe. I was in my own apartment. And yet, that word echoed again. Safe. He had said it like a promise. Or a warning. I finally drifted into a light sleep sometime after 2 in the morning, only to be pulled awake again by the sound of my alarm at 6:30. Too soon. My body felt heavy, my thoughts slower than usual, like I had not fully come back from wherever I had been. I sat up, rubbing my face, trying to shake off the lingering unease. It is over, I told myself quietly. You are going to work. That is it. Routine. That was what I needed. Something normal. Something predictable. I got dressed, grabbed my bag, and stepped out into the hallway, the familiar creak of the floorboards grounding me in something real. By the time I pushed open the front door of the building, the morning air felt different. Brighter. Warmer. Like the night before had been nothing more than a strange dream. I almost believed it. Until I saw it. Across the street. The same spot. Another car. Not the exact same one. But close enough that my stomach tightened instantly. Black. Clean. Parked like it had a purpose. I stopped walking without meaning to, my grip tightening on the strap of my bag. Do not do this, I told myself. Do not start imagining things again. But then the driver's door opened. And the same man stepped out. Same suit. Same calm expression. Like he had been waiting. My breath caught. But I forced myself to keep moving. My steps slower now, more deliberate. He did not approach right away. He let me come closer, like he was giving me space to choose whether to stop or keep going. I stopped, because pretending this was not happening was not working anymore. You followed me, I said, keeping my voice low, controlled. He shook his head once, a small, precise movement. No, he replied. We stayed. That was somehow worse. I let out a quiet breath, glancing briefly at the car before looking back at him. Why are you here? I asked. Because I needed a reason. Something that made sense. He studied me for a second, then reached into his coat and pulled out something small. White. Folded. He held it out, not stepping closer, just enough that I could take it if I wanted. I hesitated, then reached forward slowly, my fingers brushing against his as I took the paper. It was thick. Not cheap. I unfolded it carefully. A simple card. No design. No logo. Just a name. And a number. I looked up, my confusion clear. What is this? I asked. In case she asks again, he said. My brows pulled together. Asked what? His expression did not change, but there was something behind his eyes now. Something certain. To see you, he answered. The words settled slowly, heavier with each second. Because this was not over. It was just beginning. And for some reason I could not explain. I did not throw the card away. I told myself I was not going to call. That was the first rule I made the moment I stepped into the office and dropped my bag onto my desk. I placed the card down beside it, face down, like that somehow made it less real, like if I did not look at it, it would stop existing. It did not work. I could feel it there. Even when I tried to focus on my computer screen, on emails, on the quiet rhythm of keyboards tapping around me, my attention kept drifting back to that single piece of paper. A name. A number. No explanation. I pressed my lips together, shaking my head slightly at myself. This was not my life. This was not something I got involved in. I was the kind of person who avoided problems, who kept things simple, who went to work and came home and stayed out of anything that felt even remotely complicated. And yet, I had the card. I had not thrown it away. That meant something, even if I did not want it to. Emily. I blinked, looking up to see Sarah standing at the edge of my desk, her eyebrows slightly raised. You okay? You have been staring at that screen for like 5 minutes. I forced a quick smile, straightening in my chair. Yeah, just tired, I said. It was not entirely a lie. She studied me for a second longer, then nodded slowly. Get some coffee. You look like you did not sleep. If only she knew. I gave a small laugh and stood up, grabbing my mug just to have an excuse to move, to step away from the desk and the card that felt heavier than it should have. The break room was quiet, the hum of the coffee machine filling the space as I leaned against the counter, waiting for it to finish. I exhaled slowly, closing my eyes for just a second. This was normal. This was my life. Not black cars. Not men who knew my name before I told them. Not little girls who spoke like they had already chosen something. I opened my eyes again, staring down into my cup as the dark liquid filled it. You are overthinking, I whispered to myself under my breath. Just ignore it. Simple. Easy. Safe. I returned to my desk, sat down, and tried again to focus. Emails. Tasks. Deadlines. Things I could control. And for a while, it worked. The morning passed in small, manageable pieces, each hour pulling me further away from the night before. Until lunchtime. I reached for my bag, my fingers brushing against something inside that made me pause. The card. I had not meant to bring it with me. Or maybe I had. I pulled it out slowly, turning it over between my fingers, reading the name again. Adrian Moretti. The letters looked ordinary. The kind of name you would see on a business card. The kind of name that should not mean anything. But it did. Because I remembered the way he said my name. Like he had already decided it mattered. I set the card down on the desk again, staring at it for a long moment. Then my phone buzzed. I flinched slightly, the sudden sound breaking through my thoughts as I reached for it. Unknown number. My breath caught. For a second, I considered ignoring it, letting it ring, pretending I did not see it. But something in my chest tightened, that same quiet pull I could not explain. I answered. Hello. Silence. Not empty. Just waiting. Then a small voice came through, soft and familiar. Emily. My heart stopped. Lily. I sat up straighter, my grip tightening on the phone. Lily. I said, my voice barely above a whisper now. Did you make it home? She asked, cutting me off gently, like the question was more important than anything else. The exact same question. The one from last night. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. Yes, I said. I did. There was a small pause. Then I heard it. Relief. Quiet, but real. Good, she said softly. I glanced down at the card on my desk, then back at the screen of my phone. This was not supposed to happen. I was not supposed to answer. She was not supposed to call. And yet here we were. Can I see you again? She asked. Simple. Just like before. But this time, I knew better than to think it was just a question. I should have said no. The word was right there, sitting at the back of my throat, waiting to be spoken. No, I cannot see you again. No, this is not normal. No, I do not belong anywhere near whatever world you come from. But I did not say it. I sat there at my desk, phone pressed to my ear, staring at nothing while everything inside me tried to make sense of how a 6-year-old girl had just called me like this was the most natural thing in the world. Emily. Lily's voice came again, softer this time, like she thought I might disappear if she spoke too loudly. I closed my eyes for a second, exhaling slowly. Why do you want to see me again? I asked, keeping my voice steady, even though my heart was beating faster than it should have been. There was a small pause on the other end. Not hesitation. Thinking. Because you listened, she said simply. The answer hit me harder than anything else she could have said. Not because it was complicated, because it was not. I leaned back slightly in my chair, my gaze drifting to the card still sitting on my desk. Adrian Moretti. The name felt heavier now. Real. Connected. Lily. I started carefully, choosing my words, trying to hold on to some kind of control in a situation that was quickly slipping out of my hands. I do not think that is a good idea. Silence. Not empty. Not confused. Just quiet. Then, very softly, is it because of him? I did not answer right away. I did not have to. She already knew. Of course she did. I rubbed my temple lightly, glancing around the office to make sure no one was paying attention, lowering my voice just a little more. I do not know anything about your world, I said, and I think it is better if I keep it that way. Another pause. Longer this time. And for the first time, I heard something different in her breathing. Not fear. Not sadness. Something smaller. Disappointment. It settled into my chest before I could stop it. Okay, she said quietly. Just one word. Too easy. Too calm. It should have made me feel relieved. It did not. But, she added, and that single word pulled my attention right back. Can I ask you one more thing? I hesitated. Every instinct told me to end the call, to stop this before it went any further. But I had already stayed too long. Already listened too much. What? I asked. If I come to you, she said, her voice steady again, would you still say no? My breath caught. Because suddenly, this was not about a phone call anymore. This was about choice. Mine. I stared down at the card again, my fingers brushing lightly against the edge of it. I could feel the weight of it now. Not just paper. A door. And I was standing right in front of it. Lily. I began, but the words did not come out the way I wanted them to. Not firm. Not certain. Because the truth was, I did not know what I would do. And somehow she knew that too. I will not make it hard, she said gently, like she was trying to help me decide. I just want to sit with you again. That simple request. The same one from last night. But it did not feel simple anymore. I closed my eyes again, the tension in my chest tightening just enough to make it hard to breathe normally. This was how it happened. Not all at once. Not with something obvious. Just small steps. Small choices. Until you realized you had already crossed the line. I opened my eyes, staring at the space in front of me, knowing there was no answer that would keep everything the same. And that was the part that scared me the most. Because for the first time since this started, I was not sure I wanted it to stay the same. I did not answer right away. The silence stretched between us, thin but heavy, like something waiting to break if I said the wrong thing. I could hear the faint sound of her breathing on the other end of the line, steady, patient, like she was not afraid of waiting me out. That alone told me everything I needed to know. She was used to getting answers. Eventually, I glanced around the office again, the normalcy of it almost surreal now. Phones ringing, people talking, someone laughing a few desks away. And here I was, standing on the edge of something I could not explain to anyone in this room. Emily, she said softly, not pushing, just reminding me she was still there. I swallowed, my fingers tightening slightly around the phone. Where would we meet? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. There it was. Not a yes, not a no, but not a refusal either. A quiet step forward. I closed my eyes for a brief second, already feeling the shift, already knowing I had just made a choice whether I wanted to admit it or not. On the other end, I heard it. That small, unmistakable change in her voice. Relief. Warm and real. The same place, she said. Where we met. Of course. It had to be there. I nodded slightly, even though she could not see me. After work, I added, my voice steadier now, like setting a condition somehow gave me back a little control. I cannot stay long. Okay, she said immediately. No hesitation, no negotiation. Just acceptance. That should have made it easier. It did not. Because it felt like she already knew I would say that. Like she was letting me believe I was still deciding something. I glanced down at the card again, my thumb brushing lightly over the edge of it. Lily, I said quietly, stopping myself before I could second guess it. Will he be there? I did not say his name. I did not have to. There was a pause. Short. Measured. Yes, she answered. Honest. Simple. No attempt to soften it. My chest tightened slightly, but I nodded anyway, more to myself than to her. Then you need to understand something, I said, my voice lowering just a little, grounding myself in the words. I am not part of whatever this is. I am just someone you talked to once. The silence that followed felt different this time. Not empty, not uncertain, just quiet. Then she spoke again. "I know," she said, but something in the way she said it told me she did not mean what I thought she meant. Or maybe she meant more. I could not tell. "I will see you later, Emily," she added softly. Not a question, not a request, a certainty. The call ended before I could respond. I lowered the phone slowly, staring at the screen for a second longer than necessary before setting it down on my desk. My reflection stared back at me from the black surface. Same face, same expression, but something behind it had shifted. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair, letting the reality of what I had just agreed to settle in. This was not accidental anymore. This was not something I could pretend was just happening around me. I was choosing it now, step by step. And the worst part was, I did not feel like I was being pulled into it. Not entirely. Part of me was walking forward on its own. I reached for the card again, picking it up and turning it over one more time. Adrian Moretti. The name did not feel distant anymore. It felt close, real, waiting. I slipped the card into my bag carefully, like it mattered where it was, like I might need it. Then I looked back at my computer screen, the unfinished work waiting for me, the normal life I had been trying to hold on to. For a moment, I just sat there, caught between the two, and then I moved. Because whether I was ready or not, I was going back. I arrived earlier than I needed to. That was the first sign I had already gone too far. The cafe looked the same as it had the night before. Same warm lights, same quiet hum, same tables filled with people who had no idea how much one simple question could change everything. I stood outside for a moment, my hand resting lightly on the door handle, watching through the glass like I was trying to decide if I still had time to turn around. You can leave, I told myself. You can walk away right now and none of this has to mean anything. But my hand did not move. Because deep down, I already knew I was not here by accident anymore. I pushed the door open. The bell above it chimed softly, a small, ordinary sound that felt too light for the weight I carried in with me. My eyes scanned the room immediately, searching without meaning to. And then I saw her. Lily was already there, sitting in the exact same chair. Same posture. Same calm presence like she had been waiting not just minutes, but for something inevitable to arrive. Me. Her face lit up the second she saw me. Not exaggerated, not loud, just real. "You came," she said softly. Not surprised. Certain. I let out a small breath I did not realize I had been holding and walked toward her, each step steady but deliberate. I said I would. I replied, pulling the chair out across from her and sitting down. My eyes flickered around the cafe again, instinctively, automatically. He was not hard to find. Adrian stood near the back, just like before, not sitting, not blending in, just existing in a way that made space adjust around him. His gaze met mine immediately. Of course it did. It was like he had been watching the door the entire time, waiting for this exact moment. Waiting for me. I looked away first, focusing back on Lily, grounding myself in something that still felt human. "Did you eat?" I asked, the question coming out naturally, like this was normal, like this was just a child sitting across from me in a cafe. She nodded, a small smile forming. "I wanted to wait," she said. That answer did something to my chest I was not prepared for. I glanced at the table. 2 cups. One already empty. One untouched. For me. Of course. "You should not wait for people," I said gently, even though I was not sure I believed that anymore. She tilted her head slightly, studying me again like she had the night before. "But you came," she replied. Simple, direct, and somehow impossible to argue with. I let out a quiet breath, shaking my head slightly as I reached for the cup, wrapping my hands around it just to have something to hold on to. "Warm. Real. Lily," I said, lowering my voice just enough. "This cannot become a habit." Even as I said it, I knew how weak it sounded. Because I was already here. Again. She did not respond right away. She just watched me, her expression thoughtful in a way that did not belong to someone her age. Then she smiled. Soft. Certain. "It already is," she said. My breath caught. Not because of the words. Because of how true they felt. And before I could respond, before I could find a way to pull this back into something I could control, I felt it. That shift in the air again. Subtle. Familiar. I looked up. Adrian was closer now. Not rushing. Not interrupting. Just closing the distance one step at a time until he stood beside our table. Not asking permission. not needing it. Lily did not even look surprised. She reached out, her small hand resting lightly against his sleeve, like she was anchoring him there. Or maybe anchoring me. I met his gaze again, forcing myself not to look away this time. There was no warning in his expression now. No distance. Just something quieter. More certain. Like he had already seen how this would end. You came back, he said. Not a question. I held his gaze, my grip tightening slightly around the cup. I did, I replied. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was something else. Something that felt like a line had just been crossed without either of us needing to say it out loud. And in that moment, sitting between a child who had chosen me and a man who already knew it mattered, I realized something I had been avoiding since the beginning. This was never about whether I should have said yes. It was about the fact that I already had.